I love Christmas Eve. Christmas Eve, it runs very deep in my family. Christmas Eve, that's when we opened up gifts. I would wait nervously with heightened expectation as the pastor droned on and on, because we would open up gifts after the service, right? I don't know, are there any kids in that same situation tonight? You guys, the tiny humans? That's what you guys are doing? Yeah, that's like, well, it's going to, because it's you guys, 35 minutes early. Just kidding. Good. You're all right with that? That's good deal. But Christmas Eve meant so much to us. And when I was thinking about all this, we've been talking about some themes. We've been talking about Exodus. We've been talking about gift giving. We've been talking about this idea of Emmanuel, God with us, this Advent season. And it's like we've been packing a gift. We've been wrapping a gift, and all the gifts are wrapped. And it's almost time to unwrap them and see what's inside. And when I think of that, I think of the Christmas when I was about 11 years old. 11 years old is kind of the optimal time for Christmas. You guys know this, right? It's when your expectations for gifts and your ultimate excitement for gifts coalesce, right? And it's right there. And I remember I woke up one morning about 2 weeks before Christmas, and I looked under the tree, and all the gifts were there. I guess my mom went in a big garage and wrapped everything. And all the gifts were there, and there was this one gift on the tree that was huge. It was massive. It's like this big. I was 11, so it was probably this big. But, it was this big. Right? And and I looked at the tag, and it had my name on it. I was like, oh man, this is going to be the Christmas to end all Christmases. I have the biggest gift, and this is amazing. And I would pick it up and shake it and try to figure out what's in it, and do all that. And I invite my friends over, so I check it out. This gift is this big. It's awesome. I don't know what it is. And we were like peeking through the paper, trying to figure out what in the world this gift could be. And at one point, the paper kind of ripped a little bit. I don't know how that happened. and we saw, and the ripped paper revealed a secret about the gift. It said on the box, it said remote control. Oh man. We're like, what does that mean? And like we had all these gifts. My dad had always gotten me little remote control cars. I was like, oh, this is like a big boy remote control car in a box this big, like this is what it's going to be. And I remember going through that service expecting there to be this awesome remote control car or something like that, right? And I was expecting that. And God's people are expecting God to show up, right? They're expecting God to come back again. And see, you got to understand the Bible, you have to understand a couple critical things. One of them is the Garden of Eden was awesome. All right? It was the place. God's presence was totally with us. Like no separation. You could say that God was Emmanuel. God was with us completely in the garden. But what happened? A little bit of a mess up, right? A little bit of a mess up. Got separated from him. Well, there's this story about God's people in Egypt. God's people are in Egypt, and they're enslaved, and God rescues them. He rescues them. He pulls them out of the hands of Pharaoh, and they cross through the Red Sea, and they're wandering around in the wilderness. But something new is happening in all that. Something new. God's presence kind of shows up. And he's leading them with a cloud by day and fire by night going in front of them. God is with them. And God directs them to build a tent. They built a tent. They called it the tabernacle, which is, I guess, a more holy word, right? It just means tent. But they built, and inside the tabernacle, in the middle of it, there was a room they called the Holy of Holies. Have you guys ever heard of this before? They called the Holy of Holies. Here's what was cool about the Holy of Holies, is that's where God's presence was. Because when they would build that tent, and they would erect it up, God's presence would go into the Holy of Holies. And you know what they thought was the Holy of Holies? They thought it was the Garden of Eden. And so everywhere that they went, God's presence was with them. God's presence was in with them, and they knew where God was at all times. He was in the Holy of Holies, and no one else could go in there, except for one time a year. But that's a different sermon. But they couldn't go in there, and they ended up building permanent temples in Jerusalem. And they were torn down, and they rebuilt others. And they kept this temple in Jerusalem all the way to Jesus' day, when that hot spot, that presence of God in the temple was always there. And if you wanted to know where God was, you could go to the temple in Jerusalem and go, that's where God is. It's kind of like if I knew where my gift was, I could say, that's where my gift is. That's where my gift is. It's under the tree right there. But did I know what was in that gift? No, I didn't, right? And I think that kind of implies the problem. I think a lot of us, we understand aspects about God, but still, you look under the paper, you read a lot of Bible, or you listen to a lot of sermons, and you're like, ooh, remote control. I understand what's going on now, right? I understand what this God thing is all about. I understand what's great. And then what happens? Jesus is born. And we start seeing the picture. We start seeing a glimpse of the gift. We start seeing this idea of God being with us. And it's better than we could imagine. And the cool thing is that God opened up the gift for us all. After Jesus died on the cross, remember that Holy of Holies? There was a giant curtain in front of the Holy of Holies. There was a giant curtain that separated God's presence from all of us because we were too sinful, I guess, or something like that, that we couldn't be that close to God. We had to have this little separation. We still knew that God was amongst us, but He wasn't really truly with us. And I think that applies to all of us today. Is that many times we feel like we don't feel God. We feel like He's not around us. We feel like He's not just that old-time religion, spirit thing that we used to have. It just isn't burning anymore. And you're like, I don't know, is this all real? Am I just going through the motions? I don't know. I don't know if you guys struggle with that. I do. But what gives me comfort is when I open that gift, when that gift got opened for us. Because when Jesus died and took care of all of our sin, you know what happened? That veil, that curtain that separated God from us, it was ripped from top to bottom. It was like a 3-year-old ripping open a gift when first Christmas they realized what's going on. There's no one more happy than a 3 or 4-year-old at Christmas, right? It's just like, yeah! They're opening up mom and dad's gifts, everything. It's wonderful, right? God jubilating like a 3-year-old or like 11-year-old me after the pastor finally quit talking, right? Got to open this massive gift and ripped it right open. And it was better than we ever expected. I thought that my gift was just a remote control car. This was 1993, something like that. And it was a CD player with like detachable speakers and all that stuff. And it was the gift that I dared not even hope for as an 11-year-old, And I still remember that being my favorite Christmas because I couldn't stop smiling as I just stared at the box, It was way better than I ever anticipated. And that's my Christmas hope for each one of you today. Is that if you don't know if God is with you, you're listening to all these stories and you're like, yeah, God. Or maybe you feel like you have pushed yourself away from God. It's not you that opened the gift. It's God that opened it for you. And His Spirit flooded the entire world. So if you're feeling a little spiritually dry right now, God is with you. If you are on a spiritual high mountain, it doesn't get any better for you, that's great. God is with you. But God is with you in all circumstances. Because at the end of Matthew chapter 1, it says, all this took place to fulfill what the Lord had spoken by the prophet. Behold, a virgin shall conceive and bear a son, and they shall name him Emmanuel, God with us. God is with us.